Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca. I'm already laughing because we have such a fun guest on who's our favorite here today. And oh, that's right. I'm Rebecca and
I'm Landon.
I'm breaking protocol because we're just having so much fun. We have Jessica on again. You recognize her, of course. We've had her on several times. Whenever we have an interesting, provocative topic of a certain type, I'm like, let's call Jessica. I'm sure that she has a lot to say. So thank you for joining us today on this one.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yep. And you have some good stories. It's like you always do. I'll always like throw a topic out like, hey, Jessica, we're going to be talking about this. And she's like, oh, I have this. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
I think we all do. I think just having, I was in the church for 45 years. So
yeah.
You can't escape it. Yeah.
Decades of experience. Yeah. It's, you hardly run into somebody that goes, oh, yeah, that never happened to me. You're always like, oh, yes, that happened to me.
Yes, yeah.
And today, what we're talking about are patriarchal blessings, and not just patriarchal blessings, as you bring up the slide, Landon, but patriarchal blessing fails. Because I see this on social media a lot in the post-Mormon, nuanced Mormons, even my dog agrees space, where people are like, mine said this and this never happened and that. And so I kind of put something out on social media in different places and said, tell me about your patriarchal blessing fail. And there were hundreds of comments, literally. So I tried to grab the ones that kind of represented certain aspects, similarities, but boy, there were a lot, and a lot of pain sort of in describing it. And we were just talking about this before we started recording, because you give them a lot of weight and you base a lot of things on it. And then in hindsight, you realize, oh, my life could have gone a totally different direction. So yeah, I think that's exactly it. So we'll get into that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just why do we have these in the church? Where does the idea of the patriarchal blessing come from? Just for a little background, Landon, do you want to read this since you're so patriarchal?
Sure. Where does the idea of patriarchal blessings come from? The Bible and Book of Mormon describe ancient patriarchs who bestowed inheritances upon their posterity by giving them blessings. For example, Jacob blessed his grandsons Ephraim and Manasseh with special inheritances. And in his final moments, Lehi gathered his family together to pronounce blessings and prophecy about their future. As directed by revelation given to Joseph Smith, early Latter-day Saints renewed the biblical practice of fathers blessing their children, sometimes calling these patriarchal blessings, although I don't think they come from fathers anymore.
No, they come from the stake patriarch. That's exactly it. Although the patriarch used to be, I think this was in early Mormonism and the Magic Worldview, used to be like on par with the prophet. Yeah. Like the patriarch was equally as powerful. And then there was kind of a power struggle in the 70s, and the prophet kind of edged out the patriarch because you can't have two, of these figures at the top.
He was also always a descendant of Joseph Smith Sr., and I think it went through Hiram's line all the way up until they quit doing that.
Yep. But now it's just some random person who's usually older in your stake, and he is called to be the stake patriarch. Do you want to read this one, Jessica?
Sure. In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a patriarchal blessing is an ordinance. Oh, it is? I didn't know that was an ordinance.
That's what this said. Isn't that crazy?
Okay. Yeah. Ordinance, which is given when an authorized patriarch, a man ordained to the priesthood office of patriarch, places his hands on the head of the recipient and pronounces said blessing. The recipient must have previously received a recommend for the blessing from his or her bishop. This is dependent on an interview by which the bishop determines the applicant's worthiness and readiness. The purpose of a patriarchal blessing is 1, to identify the tribe of Israel to which the individual belongs, whether literal or adopted, along with the responsibilities and blessings associated. 2, to bless the member with knowledge and spiritual gifts that may be obtained by obedience to gospel principles. 3, to give advice or help the individual. Often this includes foretelling of possible future events, opportunities, temptations. Within the church, a patriarchal blessing is considered to be a revelation for the recipient, with the promises made in the blessing considered conditional upon the recipient's obedience to gospel principles.
And that's the key, isn't it? Is this how you viewed a patriarchal blessing? How old were you when you got one? Yours, Jessica?
I think I was 15. Mm-hmm. I was going to dig it out, but I just I knew it was going to be too triggering, so I didn't.
I know, me too. It's very same.
I think I have it pretty well memorized though. But I think I was 15 years old, which is normal, which is about, it's like my experience, most people were what, like 13 to 17 when they got there.
Yep, I think I was 16. So, and yeah, and this pretty much describes exactly what I thought. I'll learn the tribe that I'm in. That may sound very strange to some of our non-Mormon viewers,
but it's important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super important. And then, just what might happen in the future. I just remember because, I'm a 16-year-old girl getting it. The only thing I wanted to hear is that I'll be married, right? Yep. I was listening really intently. It had better mention a husband, it better then really the rest of it was a blur. As soon as the patriarch said that, you will be, married. Yeah. It was like, oh yeah. But prior to that, you just don't hear much because you're just waiting to hear, will I be married?
It's so sad.
Really I just said, did you have that experience, Landon? Were you concerned about that? Or how old were you when you got yours?
I was 16. And of course, you always get the, you're going to go on a mission and you're going to get married in the temple. They always give you that, of course, because then if you don't, it says here it's considered conditional upon the recipient's obedience. So if you don't do what they tell you, then it didn't happen because you weren't obedient, and therefore they make sure you go on a mission and get married in the temple because they make that a condition of your obedience. I always. Now that I'm out, I look at this like a sorting hat,
Go to the next slide.
Oh, is that the next slide?
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. We'll let you read that.
We're on the same page.
Yes. You're of the tribe of.
Yeah, exactly. Gryffindor. I know, and that's, I think what you just said, Landon, it's all predicated upon your worthiness. And that's, in reading a lot of these comments that I sifted through, that's kind of the pain people expressed when something did not happen. They, were just racked and soul searching. What am I doing wrong? It's all on me. Why isn't what I want in my blessing happening? It's me, and that, what a terrible way to live, to just feel that. But it was a very real emotion.
And they never tell you your life's going to be really bad. You're going to go through an ugly divorce and one of your children are going to die in infancy or anything like that, because then you go, oh, that happened and I'm living right. I must be living righteously. It's only good things that happen when you're living righteously. So anytime anything bad happens, it must be because you aren't living righteous,
Yeah. And that is a common answer when you go in to talk to your bishop is, well, have you been reading your blessing? Any question you could take to them, they pretty much say that, Of course, in recent years, you have people comparing blessings. You have like archives online and they're like, these are really similar, especially from the same patriarch. They might say, mine is really, really short. It's like one page and just a tiny paragraph. And I've compared with friends and they're, page after page. So I think God was just like, yeah, we know what you're going to do. So we're not going to put too much time. But I'll read this one with the sorting hat. Like Landon said, it's a common feature of patriarchal blessings to declare the tribe from which the person received the blessing descends. The overwhelming number of such assignments of lineage are to Ephraim. That's right. You are of the tribe of Ephraim, with substantial numbers being assigned to Manasseh, especially in Central and South America and the Pacific Islands. And Jews are generally assigned to Judah. Historically, other assignments were relatively rare, but in recent years, they have been becoming more common. Assignments to every one of the 12 tribes have been made by patriarchs. And again, this is the idea of taking a person and assigning a history to them that is, maybe it's rude to say, but completely imaginary, right? Where you tell someone they're a Lamanite or a Nephite or a descendant of Hogarth. You assign this entire history to a person that doesn't really exist. So, but it was a big deal. You had to listen what tribe you were from.
It is racist, as you see, that Manasseh is Central and South America and the Pacific Islands. So if you have dark skin, they're going to say, oh, you're from Manasseh. Yeah. If you have white skin, you're going to be from Ephraim. And if your name is Goldstein, you're going to be of the tribe of Judah.
That's discernment right there.
Yeah, that's discernment. But that was part of the problem with the blacks in the priesthood is they didn't know what to assign them to. And so that became a problem. And I don't know how they've resolved it since, but that was certainly one of the issues they had was that they didn't believe they were any tribe of Judah. So
Yep. But as it says down here, every single tribe has been assigned. And in college once, I remember I had a roommate, and she wasn't a good friend, but she was a roommate. And she went on a date with somebody and she came back and we said, how was it? She goes, well, it's good, but he's from a different tribe. And we all said, oh, is he a Native American? I mean, that's what we thought. We had no idea that what she meant is that they had talked about patriarchal blessings and he was from another tribe. And so she was really considering, I don't know if I can date him. I'm going to have to talk to my bishop. I mean, do you know what I mean? It's like, again, never
He didn't do anything.
Never Mormons who are watching.
The wrong house.
Yeah. Exactly. Just when you thought it couldn't get weirder, it's gotten weirder. That's exactly right, which is why we're covering this. So let's go to the next slide.
It's a weird history. It is a weird facet of the
It is. Yep. And here's an example. These are the 12 tribes, 13, I guess. And you can be assigned to any of them in your blessing, meaning that the patriarch puts his hands on your head and has an inspiration of from whence you sprung, right? Should we say that? But almost everybody I know is Ephraim, right from Joseph, unless, like you said, ethnicity plays a part, and then they might assign you something else. So, but it's to kind of bind you to the 12 tribes. It makes it sound really cool. You feel very special, but it's, I don't know, a little strange.
Yeah, and there's 12 tribes, but Joseph got a double portion, Manasseh and Ephraim, his two sons. So
yeah. Thank you for that explanation. Yeah, so that's
kind of if you are of the tribe of Levi, I believe they make you a bishop automatically, because Levites were the priestly class.
Interesting. I thought you were going to say you have to wear jeans for the rest of your life.
No, but that's what I've heard anyway, but I've never met anyone who was the bishop because they were a Levite, but that's how it goes.
Just, make Mormonism weird again if you really start thinking about it. So interesting. Okay, so, again, patriarchal blessings. Here are the comparisons. I mean, a magic 8-ball. I had one of those when I was a kid, shake it. Should I? Yes. A Ouija board, certainly told not to dabble in that when we were kids, right?
My uncle gave us a Ouija board for Christmas, and we had brand new in the box. We had to throw it in the garbage, I remember, because it was a Ouija board. But here, I didn't even know what a Ouija board was when we got it. But here we are declaring things from the other side, no different than a Ouija board. So
no, I don't think so either. Tarot cards. I've never done a reading. I've always been curious. Have you done one, Jessica?
I did one recently.
Oh,
wow. I have them here.
Well, that's right. You showed me a picture of the beautiful card you got in Paris. That's right.
Pretty. Here cool.
Anyway,
they're beautiful. They have instructions, how to do it.
Oh my gosh.
And then here's the cards.
Look at that. Oh, those are so pretty.
They're really pretty. It was fun. And, it was very lighthearted. I didn't take it that seriously, which I think is the way to do it. But
it is the way to do it.
I think people do take it seriously, and no judgment. I took my patriarchal blessing seriously for many days.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm not criticizing that, but it is fun. It's fun to it's just a fun tool.
I might want to try that. I'll have to figure out how to do that. So, and then the last picture is reading the tea leaves, which I actually got a book on that because I thought that's so interesting. You swirl them around and you put the water out, and the way that they land and the shapes and pictures they make, apparently you can tell the future. So these are all, like Jessica just said, some people take each of these, maybe not the 8-ball, but the other ones pretty seriously, right? Like they really think this is guidance from another realm. You can see the future. And of course, in the LDS Church, we have the very same thing. We have the patriarchal blessing. So let's go to the next slide. I think
dabbling in the occult can be fun.
Can be fun. That's right. Yeah. And so interesting you would mention this. So this is actually right out of the handbook. Jessica, do you want to read this? It's just so ironic to me that, the blessing, the patriarchal blessing, is given great weight and importance. Yet these other things, you're absolutely told don't dabble. So this is the occult. Go ahead and read this.
The occult. The occult focuses on darkness and leads to deception. It destroys faith in Christ. The occult includes Satan worship. It also includes mystical activities that are not in harmony with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Such activities include, but are not limited to, fortune-telling, curses, and healing practices that are imitations of the priesthood power of God. Church members should not engage in any form of Satan worship or participate in any way with the occult. They should not focus on such darkness in conversations or in church meetings.
Yeah, and can't you just see there's a parallel to fortune telling, curses, and healing practices all in the LDS church? But I think the key here is priesthood power. If you're doing it with the authority and priesthood power, it's okay. If you're not, I mean, every single one of those exists, right? Every single one of those.
I noticed they left out treasure digging and some of the other things that Joseph Smith practiced, which we're told in Richard Bushman's book was a preparatory for the receiving of the priesthood. So evidently the occult is a preparatory for the receipt of the actual priesthood power, because the things are exactly the same. What they're doing is exactly the same.
I heard it explained once by someone that I think was kind of apologist leaning. And I said something about that. I'm like, well, why is that okay? I think I was a kid. Maybe I was like a teenager, and he explained that the adversary has an opposite for every righteous thing, has its counterpart, has something to compete with, or maybe I'm trying to think of the right word, but that makes sense.
Well, like a counterfeit.
It has an
version.
Imitation of every priesthood power, which comes from Moses. When Moses threw down his staff and it turned into a snake, and then the Pharaoh's priest did the same thing. Yeah. And so say, oh yeah, anything that Satan can imitate it. But yeah.
And that was a testimony of how strong and how true the gospel of Jesus Christ's form of whatever it was, like whether it be the temple or patriarchal blessings or whatever. If Satan has, all these other options, then that absolutely means that this one is truly powerful and important. That's how he explained it to me.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. And it's a good question. So there has to be an answer to it. But I mean, even Joseph Smith could not tell the difference between a revelation from Satan, right, and a revelation from the Spirit.
Exactly.
So again, how are you supposed to know? It kind of leaves you again going, okay, yeah, do I listen to the magic 8 ball, or do I look at my patriarchal blessing? I know.
And what do we do if we go and get a reading of tarot cards and it actually ends up being correct, or something happens and we get a priesthood blessing and it does not?
Yep.
Well, the answer is always, well, you weren't righteous. That's why you got. We see often where the occult things can be are percentage-wise just as accurate as priesthood guesses are.
Yeah,
so
it's all percentage, of course it is. And in the case of a patriarchal blessing, it's also self-fulfilling prophecy, literally, because you read it and you make decisions based on it. We'll talk about Jessica's story, which is unique, in a minute here. But yeah, you read it and you go, God, my blessing told me not to, so I better not. And then, of course, that does not happen. Something else does. So it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So all right, let's move forward. Okay, this is so interesting. I don't know if all of you knew this. Probably some of you did. But Joseph Smith's father, the first patriarch, if not president of the Mormon Church, was very tall. His crooked nose was very prominent. He was a real peasant. Okay, this is from a description from someone who didn't like the Smith family very much, without education. Joseph looked much like him. Old Smith sold the blessings, which he used to pronounce on the heads of the faithful, for $3 a piece. And he sold a good many of them for years. The practice of paying patriarchs for blessings finally ended in 1943. This is from Joseph Smith the Prophet, His Family and Friends, a study based on facts and documents, written in 1886. $3 in 1830 would be $102.88 today.
Wow.
So that might, I can see why they'd start the practice of patriarchal blessings.
Expensive tarot reading.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or paying your tithing. You have to go talk to your bishop to get a blessing. So you have to make sure that you're checking all the boxes and paying tithing. So, but yeah, I put him here inside the Lucy box. Blessings, $3. The patriarch.
I didn't realize it went clear till 1943.
That was crazy. I know. It really is. And like I said, the patriarch was vying for the power in the church up until that point. They were seen as kind of equally powerful. So now we're going to talk about some patriarchal blessings. Of course, there are some that are prominent, that are written in the record, that obviously didn't happen. And then we're going to just talk about some regular person, regular people's blessings. So do you want to read this one, Landon? This was for Lorenzo Snow.
Thou shalt live to the age of Moses, yet not be old, for old age shall not come up upon thee.
Yeah. And that was given by Joseph Smith Sr. And here's a
Wow.
picture.
Remember Lorenzo Snow in what was the tithing
Windows
one?
of Heaven.
Yeah, where he gets up there, oh yeah,
Oh,
and he's shaking, he's barely walking, but old age shall not come upon him. That's well, clearly Lorenzo Snow wasn't living worthy of his blessing. So
that's it. Or maybe old age in terms of, Noah, Manasseh, Adam, hundreds of years old. Again, there are just so many examples. The next one I think is pretty funny. And this is a graphic that our friend Ron Jorgensen made. Do you want to read that? Another one for Lorenzo Snow. Jessica, do you want to read that one?
Oh, I've heard this one. This is funny. Thou must preach the gospel of thy Savior to the inhabitants of the earth. Thou shalt become a mighty man in the earth. Thou shalt have great faith, even like that of brother Jared. Thou shalt have power to translate thyself from one planet to another, power to go to the moon if thou shalt desire it. Patriarchal blessing of Lorenzo Snow.
Wow.
well, clearly he didn't want to go to the moon. That's why he was never able to do
Oh,
it.
that's true. It says if you see again that you split these hairs in the blessing. He never desired to go see the moon.
Thou shalt desire. Yeah, he took out a little insurance policy there.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it. So although those moon Quakers there look like they might need the gospel. So
I think Lorenzo should get his $102 back, or his $3 at the time.
$3, yeah.
I want my $3.
And at the time, some of those blessings were just like that. I mean, they just said it. The same with like predicting the end of the world. It's going to be now. It's going to be within, your lifetime. And we'll see that in a lot of blessings. But I think more recently, they've learned to be more general. They're not going to make these more specific things, but there were some pretty specific.
There were some specifics.
Yeah, then we're good. So my question that I kind of asked out on social media was, do patriarchal blessings come true? And we just had so many people weigh in, like I said, with experiences and how their blessing, they had let it shape their life, and in some cases regrets, that they would have tried something different or done something different if they hadn't been guided by the blessing. So it's a complex topic. It really is. So let's go to the first slide and we're just going to go through these. Here's one. Okay. Given to Joseph Smith. He, Joseph Smith Jr., shall remain to a good old age, even till his head is like pure wool. And this is given to Joseph Smith by Oliver Cowdery. Of course, that did not happen, right? Of course, he died, when he was.
I like the AI.
Yeah, I like how somebody did that,
Yeah.
I wonder if that's actually
Would he make it to 37 years old or something like that? 30.
Yeah, 80 something. I can't remember, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He was
what 80 what?
Did you say he was going to make it to 37 years old?
No, he only made it to 37.
Yeah, exactly.
Like 37 years old.
He was supposed to make it into his 80s or something, a good old age. So anyway, that's a pretty blatant one. They said you'll live a long time and you won't. And, here's a whole list. And I don't think we need to go through all of them, but all of these people were told that they would see Christ, right? Wilfred Woodruff, Lorenzo Snow, Edward Partridge, Isaac Morley, Henry Harmon. All of these were told that they would see Christ. And of course, all of these men died in the 1800s. So like I said, they really put it out there early on. You're going to live to see Christ. And then not so much.
Yeah, they had the faith, that's for sure.
They did have the faith.
To declare it. Then when it doesn't happen, they have to change the rules all of a sudden.
Yep. Okay. So we'll just kind of take turns reading. I read the first one, then we'll go Jessica, then Landon. Okay. Why don't you read this one, Jessica?
Okay. So this is from someone's patriarchal blessing.
Yeah. These are from just regular people like you and me.
Yeah. I was told that Jesus was my personal friend before I came to earth. Apparently he ghosted me.
So there's someone having a beer with Jesus. So
that's kind of fun.
Did you have anything like that in your blessing, Jessica, where they're, that's the other thing. They don't just tell you the future. They tell you what your past premortal life was like.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of that is used to kind of guilt you, like you were this before. So don't dare let anybody down because you were this, and you have no memory of that.
No, I it's so stupid. But you, at the moment, that's sort of, not sort of, but I think that's what contributes heavily to this being this profound spiritual experience, because they're not just talking about the here and now and in the future. They're talking about the past. And typically, if they do anything and they say about the past, it's stuff like this, maybe not this specific, but that mine says something about being, I was known in the pre-existence for my righteousness and, whatever. But you walk away from that feeling profoundly special and chosen. And so it really helps you to buy in. It's incredible. It's highly coercive.
Yeah, they always say something like God is personally aware of you or something like that. And
Well,
again,
or they'll give, and I think you're going to touch on this later, but they'll say Satan is aware of you too.
Exactly. Yeah, those are the ones that if I were a parent, and we'll talk about that, I'd be going, okay, stop
which is
blessing now.
It's an issue.
Yeah. Exactly. And just like we talked about, they assign you this heritage of a lineage. They also assign you this whole personality and life in the premortal life. They just put it on you, and that becomes part of who you are. I knew I was this person. Now what am I doing? It's
very written a history that you know nothing about, that no one does. But
exactly.
And they don't have to prove it.
No.
And they can say you agreed to do this in the premortal life. They've started to say that more and more. You've agreed to this.
Yes.
So you better live up to that.
We were all saved for this generation.
Yes. That's a huge one.
Always, it's always like the most righteous generation, whatever the current,
it's a feel good blessing.
Yeah.
Well, it's no different than a reading where they say, oh, in the past life, you were Cleopatra, know, because that gets you bought in. Oh, I was someone important. You're never, Ernie, the slave of Tiberius, you
got run over by a mule.
Run over by a mule. Yeah.
You always have a destiny, bigger destiny.
The soles on the shoes. No, I was.
Oh, that's true. Oh my gosh, this is going to take us hours because we're having so much fun with each one. Okay, Landon, let's go to the next one. This is oh my gosh, this one is so funny.
My blessing said that people would know me by my happy countenance. I've dealt with depression all my life and have serious resting bitch face.
But the blessing does give you characteristics that you're supposed to have. You will be nurturing, you will be sweet, and if you don't feel that way, then you feel like, what's wrong with me? So it informs your personality, your emotions. I mean, everything. You're supposed to be this person and you're not.
Yeah. It's a problem.
It is a problem. All right.
She probably dealt with depression because she never lived up to her patriarchal blessing, because
there is that too.
So
people take these very seriously. I mean, we're being a little lighthearted about this, but all of us in the church took it very seriously, and people continue to take it very seriously.
Well, and it affects everyone around them, because the ones closest to them, how would they interpret? And I'm sure we'll get into that, but
yeah. No, I mean, it affects people. They say not to really compare blessings with others, but I know when people get engaged or serious, they will often read their blessings to each other. And I know of scenarios where people say, gosh, she didn't really seem to match up to what my blessing said. I don't know if I can continue to date. It absolutely impacts your life going forward, interpersonal revelation or relationships. This one said, I was told that there were many souls in the heavens above waiting to come to your union. Joke's on them. I only ever had one child. And after that, my now ex-wife said for me to get a vasectomy. LOL. So that's a huge one in blessings, children. And that's one of the huge sources of pain when people don't have children, or the number of children that they were told they would have. They really believe that's a promise and they hold on to it, and it causes incredible pain. But of course, they're going to tell you, they're going to basically mold you into the perfect Mormon person and family. You're going to get married, you're going to have kids, you're going to, those things don't happen.
Going to raise them in the gospel. But you got to read the fine print of your patriarchal blessing that says, if this doesn't come true in your lifetime, it will come true in the afterlife. So here they'll say, oh, but there's many souls that you're going to have in the eternities as you continue to have children. Therefore, don't worry about it.
And don't worry if you're not married. And we have a slide on that too. Don't worry about any of it because it'll be later. But we all thought it was now, and we all lived our life like it would be now. And the disappointment is huge.
What's the point if it's not for now?
Yeah.
If it's in the part where everything is revealed, it doesn't matter. You don't need it.
Yep. That's exactly
well said.
Yep. All right. Jessica's turn.
Okay. Nothing super specific, but it was said the time was, quote, not far distant when a worthy priesthood holder would take me to the temple and marry me. Hasn't happened in 30 years, and it's not gonna.
See?
Yeah.
Well,
And that's
30 years is a blink of an eye to the Lord.
exactly. And it's, and I know we laugh at these and these are funny in tone, but the laughter represents a great deal of heartache and pain and turmoil that just was so unnecessary.
Yep. And especially this, look, a worthy priesthood holder will take me to the temple. So if this person, when this person was an active member, if they had opportunities to get to know or to date or to go out, or even, a proposal from someone that wasn't a worthy priesthood holder in the temple, I think the person would probably say no. Do you know what I mean?
Probably.
And that's the thing. That's the damage and the pain right there. So.
And then you don't get married for 30 years because you turned down the person that you could have married, that you loved and that was a perfectly good person, but because they weren't a worthy priesthood holder, you threw it all out.
Well, and as a woman, those are your childbearing years. I mean,
that's it exactly.
There's no over on that.
Yep, there was no other options.
Life, but
nope, that's exactly it. Okay, Landon.
Mine went on for multiple paragraphs about I'm going to marry a man and have at least 4 children with him. I am a lesbian. Obviously, that was someone else's, not me, but.
Yeah.
I like that you got this one.
But again, this cookie cutter life that they spell out, and, people try to live according to it. Yeah.
Very storybook.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. That's exactly right. So, okay, let's see. It said I was going to go on a mission, and after that I would marry returned sister missionary. LOL, I'm gay. Same thing. Exactly. They just spell out how it's supposed to work, but that's not the reality for a lot of people. And hopefully a lot of people find their way to the other side of that, but some people don't, and they're tortured literally by their patriarchal blessing.
Yeah, if there's anything to learn, it's that there's a standard playbook, and they just put everyone in the standard playbook and tell them this is what you need to do.
Well, and if you read it, it's very much geared to a child.
Yeah.
When you read them, it's clearly for a teenager.
That is a really good point. You're right. Yep, this one's Jessica's. Here we go.
My patriarchal blessing is almost completely about being a mother. It says I will birth many kids into the covenant home I build with my priesthood and current temple recommend holding husband. A couple of years after trying, I've learned I'm infertile. And then she gives the middle finger to the patriarch who told me that. At least it helped lead to my husband and I's deconstruction. So she had a little emoji with the middle finger. But that so painful and just so cruel to this poor couple.
Yep.
Anyway.
And how much money do you think they spent trying to, fertility? Maybe not, but many people would go to fertility clinics and try everything they could because their patriarchal blessing says they're supposed to.
Yeah. Well, in the church, I mean, they just put, twist that dagger too in the temple, fulfill the measure of your creation. I mean, this per couple, and we see it over and over again, but I'm really surprised they're still doing it because it is so harmful.
It is so harmful. Yep, I think Landon's turn.
I was told I would marry a young woman, married a woman older than me, that I would yet become a leader religiously and politically, and that my wife and I would have many children. We cannot have any. Either I'm living incredibly unworthily or patriarchal blessings are a BS ordinance.
Yeah, that's the very same sentiment. And again, this person's on the other side of it, so they can kind of be tongue in cheek. But when you're in the middle of it, you're reading it going, why? I don't understand. Nothing is happening the way it's supposed to. It must be me.
Well, and the significance also plays to look at how everyone even remembers it so clearly. They don't have to go look at it and read it. They have read it that many times, and they let it impact them that many times that it's right there on the surface. I'm sure people are just quickly typing their comments out.
Wow, because I lived with it for all those years. It was their identity until it wasn't. And even that is painful to let go and to deconstruct that. So such a good point, Jessica. You're right. This person says, my blessing claims that I was friends or companions with certain Book of Mormon characters in the pre-existence, despite the fact that I'm certain these individuals are fictional. right along with the pre-existence. So yeah, and again, that just
I love that AI.
I know. I had so much fun making these. Like, I'm Moroni, but again, you feel so special. These things that they tell you in the past life. I was friends with the Book of Mormon characters. It does. It just makes you feel more special than anyone else and set apart for something else, you know?
And they catch you when you're young.
Exactly.
Doing that, you know, and you do feel just chosen, and I have to live up to this.
Yeah, you believe the fantasy. That's exactly right. Yeah, and then when your blessing says something like that, it's like, hey, everybody. I mean, I don't want to say.
Yeah, I know.
But guess what? Yeah, exactly.
Me and Nephi were homies.
Yeah, we were homies in the pre-existence. I called him Neath. Yeah. Yikes. Okay, Jessica's turn. Next one.
I was told that I would get married in the house of the Lord. My wife and I were married by a Catholic priest. It was a beautiful ceremony with our family and friends in attendance, including Catholics, Protestants, Jews, atheists, and even a few Mormons.
That's good. That's a happy one. Sounds like that person, you know.
Yeah, they let, you know, they decided their own life.
They chose their own fate. Yep, they didn't let some old man who is in their stake, who doesn't have any idea who they are, tell them how they were going to get married.
And again, this one, Landon, sometimes the patriarch just goes off the rails. Seriously, they're very old. Yes. Usually they're elderly. And sometimes, a lot of times it's just rote. It's what they say to everybody. But sometimes, like this, they get oddly specific and go off the rails.
This one's good.
Is this mine?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. One mission companion had a line in his blessings about inventing a new form of electricity that would change the world. I thought that one was pretty out there.
That's a picture of Tesla. But yeah, I mean, what are you supposed to do? You're sitting there going, what? But that would probably convince you to become an electrical engineer or study, you know, I don't know, or start plugging things into sockets. I don't know.
Well, you bring up a good point. I think, and this does happen, and I think you're going to cover it about the do-over blessings, but we're never released as a patriarch.
Yeah.
So you do get some men, and they're all men, but you do get some men that have dementia or Alzheimer's or, you know, there's,
The other thing of this, though, is it's possible that this patriarch knew this kid very well and knew that he was a very smart kid and that his dad was in this electrical field. And so he's like, oh, this kid's going to go on and do great things. So he's like, I'll say this because it's obvious he's a really smart kid, you know, thinking that that's what's going to happen because he knows the person.
Yeah, and it depends on the personality of the patriarch. I mean, my dad loved to talk. I could totally see my dad saying something like this if he was ever a patriarch. But, you know, I mean, it's just the personality.
Yeah. So your dad was a patriarch?
No. If he was.
If he was the type of person.
Yeah, although his blessing said he would become one and he never did.
Oh, interesting.
Also said, and I don't think my siblings will ever watch this, so I'll just say that his wife was created for him.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know how many felt about that, but I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's the way they would say it. You know, you're just meant to be kind of, and she
was that special that Heavenly Father created a woman just.
Interesting. All right, let's move on. Okay. Oh, so this talks about kind of what you talked about before, Landon, where it says, my sibling, who is much darker skinned than the rest of us lily white folk, was told he was from Manasseh in his blessing, but our parents and everybody else was from Ephraim. So I guess our patriarch was just super racist. So he looked at the child, even though it's parentage, and said, you're this because you're darker. So
maybe they should have some DNA testing done here.
They should trust the patriarch.
If you believe in the patriarch, he might be right.
No, I know. And when the blessing leaves confusion like that, you're just kind of like, wait, what did that mean? I'm sure you guys all heard that rumor or faith promoting story about a guy that went in to get his blessing and the patriarch said, I can't say anything. And he was killed the next day in a car accident. You know, there's, it's just a patriarch. That's another thing I was stressed out about in my blessing. Now that I remember, I'm like, okay, please say something. I don't want to die tomorrow. You know, it's a very supercharged situation when you believe it. I mean, you really believe you're going to find out about your future. your past, everything. So it's hard to describe to people who aren't LDS what it means.
It means a lot. And
it does mean a lot.
The whole family usually goes together. You go fasting often.
Yep.
It's a big deal.
Yep. Oh, here's a good one for Jessica.
Okay. In high school, a guy's blessing said that he had been one of God's bodyguards in the pre-existence. He brought it to school and passed it around to great jealousy and envy. Still not sure why God needs a bodyguard. But that's so great. He brought it to school.
I can imagine, hey guys, I mean, I didn't want to say anything, but you know,
I meet the kid that's going to bring it to school.
But yeah, I don't know what that means. And I wonder if then you'd go forward thinking you're a person that has to be a protector, that has to put yourself in danger, that has to, you know what I mean? You're told you have this personality or this person you were before. Do you try hard to be that person again? You know, this could be dangerous if the kid.
Well, it goes back to that buy-in, and that you have to get them while they're young and then create this history. And it's just, it's a really, the better their origin story, you know, the more likely. I mean, it's well meant, but it is very harmful, like you said.
Yep, it absolutely is. But we all believed it. What's yours, Landon? Next one.
I was just in disbelief of that one. Last week, my daughter was promised her calling and election would be made sure in her blessing. Bullshit.
So this is recent. This just happened. Of course, the white picture there, because when you get your second anointing, it involves a foot washing with hair ceremony, husband and wife, and you apparently receive a fabulous parting gift of a white pitcher. So
with hair?
Yeah. I don't know what people do with short hair. I know it's kind of maybe
most of those women have short hair.
Yeah. I'm not sure how it works.
You got to roll over on your back and kind
there's a reason I have long hair. You too, Jessica. So
okay.
When that kind of came out a couple years ago, a lot of people you'd see on social media going, "Oh my gosh, I went to my parents' house and there's a new pitcher and bowl on the mantle. Do you think it means this?" You know, so
I don't get invited to those homes anymore. So
exactly.
I'm guessing she came from a very wealthy family, which is how the guy knew that she would have her calling and blessing.
Yeah, prominent. Yeah.
Pretty much the only way you're going to get that is to be prominent. The regular person isn't. Okay. This person said, my grandmother would not taste death and would live to see the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse ride through the sky. She died 25 years ago.
Oh, I wish I had that in my blessing.
I know, but again, scary, huh? I mean, you're kind of like, oh, I'm going to what? You know, I mean, I don't want to see the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse ride through the sky. So, but there's so many like that. You see the end and you don't see the end. So
I know.
Yep.
This has just got to destroy your testimony if you're a believer and you see the patriarch said this and none of this happened.
There's a spin. There's always a spin.
There is always a spin.
Oh, I've heard things like this before, and this is very disturbing. This is Jessica's.
Oh, okay. I heard one from a girl at EFY. Apparently a boy in her home ward who was born with several disabilities was told in his blessing that he was one of the people to personally escort Satan out of heaven. He was given those disabilities to protect him from Satan while on the earth.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that before. The more valiant you were, the more, on earth you may have.
Well, then it used to be the reverse. They taught the opposite.
Yeah.
It's just disgusting.
But again, you've made up this story, and is this comforting to a family? I don't know, to say this is why our child is like this. But it's so irresponsible because it's a complete falsehood. But here's someone who lived with this in their blessing and probably is still living with it. We don't know the person's circumstance. So.
Oh, that's hard. That makes me
sad. I know. Okay, Landon.
I was told I would live a life of great suffering, and the only way to overcome it was to lose myself in God's work. Weirdly, the further away from the church, the happier I seem to become.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah, and that's what you want to hear in your blessing. I have some weird stuff in mind too, like that are like backhanded, where you're like, what? But imagine being 16 and here, you're going to live a life of great suffering. I mean,
unless you work for the church for free the rest of your life, you're going to experience great suffering. That plays on somebody's mind.
Well, it does. And just Jessica's point, everybody who quickly typed in their answer, that is something that they were living with this whole time, and they knew it by heart. They knew it. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they can't dismiss that it didn't impact them. It did.
Yep. That's exactly it. My blessing said I would have a special relationship with my mission president. He wanted to send me home. Is this yours, Landon?
That was mine. Yeah. I recognize that as I saw it.
Well, and you tend to get these, especially when you're a guy, at that age, and they always
because it's right before the mission, so they focus. I bet your blessing, Landon. How old were you?
I was 16,
yeah.
and it had quite a few things about my mission in it. Yeah.
Yeah, for boys, it's heavy about the mission.
Yeah, it absolutely. So yeah,
which as I started to get older, I would kind of look at that and think, it's 2 years. That's it. Yeah. Why are we focusing? I mean, I know it is a pivotal time. It is pivotal. But still.
Because they know if they can get you there, then all the other things they've told you are you'll follow those. 2 years.
Yeah, and they often tell you when you express doubts, think about your mission. Do you remember how you felt on your mission?
Oh,
they try to take you back to that time, the feelings, because it's all about feelings, and that's a time where everything's very, intense. So
you're right, and I remember my stake president even saying that with my patriarchal blessing. Read your patriarchal, read it. And then also remember how you felt when you first received it. That was the other thing he kept saying.
Yeah, that's it.
So I would read it and be like, this
isn't. All right, Jessica's turn.
All right. My seminary teacher in the 80s told all of us that his blessing said he would be one of the prophets lying dead in the streets of Jerusalem at the second coming. Imagine living your life under this delusion.
Yep. And this is actually mine. And it was my seminary teacher. And I just looked him the other day and he's looked him up. He's living in West Jordan. So he hasn't made it to the streets yet. He's not an apostle or a general authority. But yeah, I mean, the way he told it to us, all of us kids, we were like, whoa.
You're saying there's a chance.
You're saying there's a chance. There's still going to be a chance. I know. Color me wrong. I'm so sorry. But again, like I said, imagine living your life under this, fear kind of,
or just massive expectation too. And I mean, for him also that he wasn't ever called to be a general authority. He wasn't ever called, that's like, well, to my blessing, I'm supposed to.
What did I do wrong? He must right now be thinking, I guess I just didn't do it quite right.
Well,
I wanted to have the honor of being dead in the street.
What do you do when someone gives you a ticket to Jerusalem? Do you say, oh, no, I know what's going to happen there. Not me.
I know. It's not like you're just going to happen to be there.
That is the test. In fact, didn't you say, Landon, that everyone's talking so much about the second coming, right? The rhetoric is out there, just every talk, everything. Shouldn't all the apostles move to Jerusalem right now just to be ready, right? Because 2 of them are prophesied to.
Well, they'll move it to the New Jerusalem, which is what, Salt Lake now? I have no idea. It used to be Missouri. Now I think it's Salt Lake. I don't know where the New Jerusalem.
And they sold off all their land in Missouri.
They sold they sold off New Jerusalem because God's a real estate God. So
that's it. And the price was right. And again, it could be metaphorical.
Real estate God,
Yep. Laying dead in the street could be metaphorical. We don't know.
That's right.
Okay. I think it's Landon's turn. This one is the one that made me the maddest right here.
A family friend was told in his blessing that he would die young. He was just like, WTF.
Yeah. If I were the mom at that blessing, I would have stopped everything right there. Can you imagine telling an impressionable young person that?
No, that's a kid. I wouldn't be surprised if a kid truly believed that would commit suicide.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It would just mess with your mind so completely. I would be really upset if I were a parent and my child was told something like that. You count on it just being kind of nebulous and not harmful. But this right here is off the charts.
Or you'd say, I'm not going to live righteously then, and I can live a full life.
I'm leaving the church today. I'm not going to do that. Yeah. No, this is just irresponsible to the highest levels. All right. Let's see. Did you read that one, Landon? Is it my turn?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, my blessing told me I'd raise someone from the dead. Well, that's a lot of pressure, right?
This must be that guy in General Conference who raised the gnat.
With the gnat.
I bet this is his.
Just these extreme claims. You're just like, what are you supposed to do with that? I don't know.
Oh.
Maybe he grew up to be a doctor, and maybe he actually has raise
brought
people
someone
from the
back.
dead. Who
Maybe.
knows? All right. Oh, great. Here's a good one for Jessica.
Okay, this was sad. My dark and short Mexican friend was told in his blessing that if he has faith, his eyes will turn blue and his hair blonde.
Well, there's the racism coming through.
That's
Yep.
dang, that's sad.
That's not even subtle. That's
I know. I did hear about one, and the parents, we'll talk about the do-overs, but they got a do-over.
Yeah.
And it was in LA. I heard about it from my sister-in-law. So their teenage daughter went in, and she was promised that she would marry someone of European descent. And the parents had a new one. They were so disgusted. They had a new patriarchal blessing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
do-overs are real.
it was more subtle than this. I mean, there's no subtlety.
This reminds me of the guy in Ronald's Little Factory that comes in and he's going, "Oh, my skin's turning.
Yeah.
Can you see it?"
Yeah.
I mean, you got to start. You're going to be looking in the mirror every morning, going, "Are the eyes turning? Are they becoming more blue?"
Right. But again, he was told he's less than the way he is now.
Yeah.
And if he lives right, he'll be someone that God favors. But right now, less than. So that's my judgment.
That is so harmful, and that's just cruel.
Okay. Here's a good one. And I think after we read this one, we're going to talk about Jessica's patriarchal blessing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Landon.
I mentioned to the patriarch I was interested in being a nurse. So then I get my blessing, and I am told over and over again to study a profession where I help people physically. So I went to school for nursing and absolutely hated it. Tried to bounce around to other medical professions. Didn't do well at all. Turns out he probably just said that because at 14, that's the job I thought I wanted. And I told him it was because I could work and still be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah, a lot of people have that. But this brings up, and this is why I think my patriarchal blessing did not mention any kind of profession. Mine was full of, being a mom and a help meet and stuff like that. But Jessica's was unique, kind of like this post here. Yeah, tell us about yours. I thought this was fascinating.
Yeah, I had a quote good one. So mine was like 3 or 4 pages. So kind of as a backstory, we were in the state, we were living in San Diego area, Southern California. And my sister, 3 years older than me, she got a patriarchal blessing. Hers was pretty short. But the patriarch was quite old. And so in between the time she got hers and I got mine, there was a new patriarch. And so when I went, we were still just in the double digits. I think I was like in the 20 range for him. He hadn't done that many because it says on your blessing what number you are.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's on the top corner or something.
Right.
And I don't recall what number I was, but it was pretty early on. And he was younger and he had daughters. So I think that's why I got this. But and I do remember him talking to me before, and he was asking me, what kind of things I was interested in. And one thing, my dad chimed in and he said, "Oh, she likes clothes. She likes to shop, or something." And I don't think he could twist that to like gospel, because I do remember him asking, "What else are you interested in?" And I told him I really liked fitness. And anyway, and so we kind of talked about that. And then he gave me the blessing. And so the blessing was heavily about career. Not heavily about career, but it just said you will have a career. But then, and this is the thing that upsets me about it, is immediately after there was a qualifier and it said that only if I, something about, have to make my children a priority and my husband a priority and being the peacemaker, that is my absolute priority. As long as I can do that, I will be able to successfully have it. If I don't, then I won't have success in my career. And I don't think any men, it says, I don't know, maybe a few, but that their careers are conditional upon how well they do it at home. But anyway, so I had that. And then he talked a lot about fitness too, kind of, and he didn't say career and fitness, but they were sort of right by each other, in the placement of the blessing when the words were said. And here I am today in the fitness industry, and it truly is because of the blessing. And it gave me the confidence to do it. And early on, I was active in the church when I did first start working. And it was one of those things, and people were very surprised that I was, but it was always there. I always knew I needed to be doing something, that I was going to have a career, and it worked out for the good. But now in hindsight, I wish I could have just made that choice on my own. And, but it was interesting when we left, because that was kind of the elephant in the room. Everyone was surprised that that was there. And we're in the car, and I had my two sisters next to me, and my parents were in, my dad was driving, and then my mom was in the passenger seat. And I was right behind my dad, who was the driver. And my mom turned around and she patted my knee and said, "Sweetheart, motherhood is a career."
Oh.
And that was the message. It wasn't, "Oh, sweetie, what are you interested in? What would you like to do?"
Yeah.
It was, no, you're still going to do this. And I am glad I'm a mother, and I did love staying home with the kids with the years I did. But it goes back to, I should have had that choice. That should have been, couples should make those decisions together, not this old man that didn't know me at all. And also another thing too, I think he kind of went over and above for me, particularly because my parents were pretty prominent in the community and within the church and leadership. And so I think he was trying to please them.
Yeah,
well.
I know that factors into it. Absolutely. That informs what kind of a blessing you have. But at least your blessing had the word career.
I know. It was great. It was,
that's incredible. And I feel like what he should have said is, in the pre-mortal life, you were the fitness trainer to Nephi. The reason he looks that way in all the pictures in the Book of Mormon is because of your training.
Battle. I know. It was just, I mean, it worked out for the good. It did.
But you're the exception, not the rule, because most girls go in and are told about a family. And
I was told about that. And I was told I'd marry and have children.
Yeah.
I mean, that was all in there.
That's a requirement for women. Yeah.
Yep. You have to have that. You're never told that's not going to happen for you. So I think that's great though.
It's interesting though, because what you described is what happens is you go in and he doesn't just give you a blessing. You sit down and you talk for a while. And he's probing you to find out things about you that he can then use in the blessing in the future. So, that's how the same thing that a psychic would do when you sit down and starts asking you about your love life and your past boyfriends and, where are you at now? Are you married? Are you single? Because obviously a single person wants to hear something different than a married person,
Exactly.
Yeah, and probably knows something about your family, so can make some guesses on, how things are. So yeah, it's no different than a psychic. You're right, Landon, where you try to read the room before so that you're more accurate. So, yep.
Yeah, but I do remember him asking questions, and I remember the fashion statement. And
that's really funny.
Fashion.
So I see someday there will be top garments, and you'll be a part of that. Maybe that. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's see. I don't even know where we are. Landon, I think this is yours.
My blessing told me I had the gift of tongues. They sent me on a mission to Pennsylvania. I speak broken, bad Spanish despite having lived in Mexico for a year and having a Mexican wife.
No gift of tongues there. Yeah, that's a common one too. I've heard, especially for missionaries, that you'll have the gift of tongues. So maybe yes, maybe no. I read a girl's blessing in the early 2000s. And it stated that she was best friends with Satan in the pre-existent life, and he would do anything in his power to get her back to him. I remember being so scared for her. And this is another one. If I were a parent in the room, I would have stopped the blessing right there, because the mind games you would play on yourself if you thought that Satan was personally after you, it's bad enough to just think Satan in general is trying to tempt you, but irresponsible again, and no reason for this kind of blessing.
I can't.
No, there's no.
Best friends with Satan. The other guy's best friends with Moroni. She's best friends with Satan.
Well, remember, he was a good guy before he had a different plan. Haven't you seen the play My Turn on Earth? I have a plan, right?
Well, that would make you think she's a very strong person if, a third of the hosts went and you're his best friend and you were able to pull yourself away from that.
That's right. But he is equally upset with you because you were best friends and he is now personally after you. So that is going to mess with your mind. Again, I would stop that in a heartbeat as a parent. I would say nope. And I would say do over, because that is, you don't need to have that on there. Okay. Jessica's turn.
My blessing said that I would have children. Didn't happen. I taught school for years, and people would say to me, and still do, but these children were like your own. I taught kids with special needs. Yes, I love them, but no one can convince me that it was the same as giving birth.
Yeah, that's one of those workarounds, right? Where it'll happen
that's
later. Yeah.
And it's so common. I heard a statistic about infertility recently. It's like 1 in 4 adults. I mean, it's so common. So to promise this is incredibly irresponsible.
Yep.
You don't know.
Yep, a lot of heartbreak. Oh, I think we already had this one in there, didn't we, Landon? I think I must have moved it. So go to the next one. Yep. This is the one about not getting married in 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, some of these are repeats. That's weird. Is it? No, this one isn't. Okay, go ahead.
Is it me?
It is you. Yeah.
Oh, my blessing said that I would go to other countries to teach the gospel. I've never left my hometown, and I preach the Mormon gospel as bad news to anyone who will listen.
Well, that's a good spin. I guess maybe some people turn against their patriarchal blessing and want to do exactly the opposite of what they said. So that is funny. Oh, this is another one of mine. This is a picture of my Mountain Meadows Massacre ancestor. And it says, I was told in my blessing, this is my blessing, that I would never have very much, but I would always have just enough because my ancestors had been righteous pioneers, kind of like a double-edged promise. Isn't that interesting? It did say that. I remember being 16 going, well, okay, I'll always have enough, but I mean, what do you mean never have very much? What does that mean? I don't know. So if you'd like to donate to Mormonish Podcast, we have links in the show.
That's awful.
I know.
I see
it's
where
really
you get
weird.
your hair from, Rebecca.
Do you think so? Yeah, I would never have just enough. Thank you. But no, it's because my ancestor joined the church and he was always one step behind the saints. So he's coming into Nauvoo and a nice Mormon man runs out and goes, oh yeah, you can buy my house here, and so he gets the, I know, terrible stuff like that. He finally ran into Brigham Young, who asked him for like $500 or something. And the legend in the family goes that because he gave the $500 to Brigham Young, a lot of us have versions of this in our blessings that will always have barely enough to survive because of the righteousness of our ancestor. Of course, this ancestor then went on to be a shooter and clubber in the Mountain Meadows Massacre. So I'm not exactly sure what that gets me in my blessing, but it was just another one of those moments where I'm like, okay. Double-edged promise.
I think this was trying to tell you to pay your tithing, and then if you give all your money to the Lord, you'll have just enough to get by.
You'll get it back, and that's kind of how they did it back then. Give us all your money, and then we'll give you a small stipend to live on, but you've given it to God. So that happened over and over. Yeah. All right, Jessica's turn. Oh, here's a good one.
Okay, I was told that I would be among the senior councils. I would be among the senior councils of the church, among the great and mighty, or something close to that. Very major fail on that one.
Yeah, I think this is what they say to guys a lot. Obviously not the women, but guys get that leadership. You will be a leader. I mean, don't you have something in your blessing, Landon, that says you won't be a bishop, but you'll work with bishops or something like that? Am I remembering that wrong?
I don't think it said you wouldn't be a bishop, but it said you'd work closely with bishops and other leaders.
And you were always in the council, not the bishop.
Yeah.
And I have heard of men having say specifically, you will be a bishop. And I don't know that it always happens.
Yeah. Well, and that's pressure because you know what you have to do to be a bishop or in leadership. You have to be church broke your whole life. You have to do step by step. You know how to do it. So, yep. All these promises. Okay, Landon.
My mom's blessing says that she will still be in her human body at this time, the second coming, and be there to witness Christ's second coming.
So it sounds like this person might still be alive. So who knows? There is a lot of rhetoric right now about the second coming. It's everywhere. Now, who knows? I was told I would be called to teach the poor and downtrodden. Then I got called to a wealthy Nordic country. LOL, right?
Yeah.
Oh, these are great. All right, Jessica's turn.
I was told my kids would be with me in the celestial kingdom. Those that would choose to. I always looked at my kids to see which one would be unrighteous. Turns out it was me. They are still in.
And that is my blessing too. I had to put after I listened for that.
It's so
get married and have kids. It says your kids will be with you, those that choose to. And so I had 3 little boys, and I used to just look at them going, which one of you is it going to be? Right? Exactly. And
Oh, that's so funny. Oh, wow.
I mean, it just reaches into every aspect of your life. You look at your kids, you look at your spouse.
Everything.
I mean, what if you're told you will marry someone who will be a church leader, and you're a woman, and that's not happening, and you're like, honey? I mean, it just makes you.
Did I divorce him?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not just you; it's everyone around
And then
you
put the
too.
pressure on him, and then you're right.
Yeah.
It's a great example that if it does affect everyone.
Everyone, or you're dating someone and you're like, you don't look like you could be a bishop, and I'm told I'd marry a bishop. It makes you judge everybody, look at everybody. It's not just you in your life, it's all the lives you interact with. So,
well, and it's so unnecessary.
Yeah,
it's so much pressure, because what purpose is this really going to serve?
That's
I mean,
exactly
it's meant to be, it's going to happen.
Yep.
So
the purpose is to get you to follow their plan. They're going to lay out their plan and hope that you follow it. It's not about helping you. It's about helping them.
Here, let's see. I think it's Landon's turn. Yeah. And again, this is just the pain of it. We are being kind of tongue in cheek about some of these, but there's underlying great pain.
Mine was about 50% completely wrong, though I lived and believed with all my heart. I used it as a guide during my many, many TBM years. It only brought me tears and frustration.
That's sad.
Yep. And that's the reality. That's what's underneath all of this. And yeah, then I think we finished. I mean, there were so many more that I could have included, so many, but I do want to point out that not only do you believe your blessing, but other people around you believe your blessing. Your parents, my parents, at least, yours probably too, used to say, you remember what it says in your blessing, or, they look at you as that person. And I have probably a strange example. I think I've told it before, that my blessing said that I will comfort those who have lost a spouse. Okay. So I grew up thinking that the only way that I could know how to do that is if I myself was a widow. So I believed my whole life that whoever I married, I would be a widow, and therefore I would know how to comfort people. And when I had been married about 10 and probably about 15 years, I had a running partner, and we were out running one day, talk. And I mentioned that part of my blessing, and she stopped short and she said, I don't think that we can be as close as we have been, because my husband has heart problems. Because she's thinking, I'm a person that's going to comfort people. She's somebody whose husband has precarious health. She better not be around me. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, I see. Oh, wow.
Yeah. She didn't want me to be her friend so that I would comfort. Like somehow me having that in my blessing might cause our friendship to cause her husband to die. I mean,
it was going to be contagious.
It was going to be contagious. So that's more of an extreme example, but parents treat you a certain way. People look at you a certain way, what you're supposed to do and accomplish. So, it's not innocuous at all. It has a huge impact no matter how you look at it. So before we get into this part, Landon, is there anything you want to share about your blessing? Jessica and I have both kind of talked about some of the things in ours. Was there anything that stuck out in yours?
Mine said that I should study from the best books and I would have a knowledge of the gospel better than most others.
That came true. That came true because you're on a podcast talking about gospel knowledge, and you know more than most.
That knowledge let me right out.
I love that. See, in some ways they do come true, even though
that definitely came
true.
You
meant. I love that.
That's cute.
That is great. That is great. So the whole point of the podcast is, do they come true? And, then they don't come true. And so how do people spin that? What gymnastics do you need to use when it doesn't happen? So here's an article I found I think it was in LDS Daily Living or something. It says patriarchal blessings, what to do when yours isn't coming true, right? Because as we talked about, a lot of them don't. So what do you do if you're faithful, believing, and you think this is God talking to you about your future? So let's go to the next slide here. So there's a couple different things. The first one, it says, be open to different interpretations, right?
There you go.
Yeah. It doesn't mean what you think it means, right? It means something completely different. It doesn't mean you're going to get married. Yeah. If it says you're getting married in the temple, that's not what it means. It means that in the next life, you'll be someone's 800th wife. Be open to a different interpretation. So, okay, Jessica, could you want to read number 2?
Remember that the blessings are what's promised, not the timing.
Again, right? Yep. Just because it hasn't yet doesn't mean it won't.
Mm-hmm.
Carefully study your patriarchal blessing regularly and maybe even attempt to memorize it to help achieve the blessings promised.
I didn't do that. Did either of you guys do that?
No. Well, what they're saying is have it memorized so that you can try to emulate what it's saying. So you make it come true by having it in the top of your head that you need to make that happen.
Yep, I think that's right. Wow, I never memorized mine. But in fact, I can't find mine. I've been looking. I looked probably about a year ago and I can't find it. I know you can reach out. There's an archive, right? And you can like write in and you can get it.
You're still a member if you're not a member.
I'm still a member, so I think I still could. So
yeah.
I know, and that's a good point. We talked about this earlier. When you remove your records or you're excommunicated, then I guess your blessing is no longer existent. So the example that we were talking about before we started taping was Nemo, and he did a great episode where he said, I no longer have a patriarchal blessing. So he asked ChatGPT to bestow a blessing on him. And then he read it out loud. And I swear it was better than 90% of the blessings I've heard. I mean, it sounded absolutely real. It had the correct verbiage. It had the
it did.
Went through the protocol. Yep.
The order that it went.
Yeah. I mean, it assigned a tribe. I mean, it did everything.
And it did the tribe early on, and then it was uncanny.
Yeah, it was eerie. So
it was.
It makes me wonder now if patriarchs will use that because it had some good stuff in it. Like it was very poetic.
Your patriarch would consider that.
I know. No, it was crazy. I thought that was a great episode Nemo did. And now he has a patriarchal blessing since his was removed. I'm not exactly sure what the process is. And I don't know if you rejoin, if you get it back or you get a new one.
I don't know. I do know that you can ask for, if you're a descendant, you can get their blessing if they passed away.
Yep.
But I have to be a member of the church to get that too.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of protocol involved. So let's see. Number 4, pick a blessing to work toward. And that's what we're talking about, the self-fulfilling prophecy, where you focus on something and you say, gosh darn it, my blessing, I'm going to make it happen.
I'm going to do it.
Like you talked about, Landon, with infertility, right? If you're promised in your blessing, you will have 12 children and that's not working out, you're not going to stop. You're not going to think, okay, let's make this decision based on what's really happening in the real world. You're going to keep moving forward. And so that can be really painful when you're working towards something that is kind of out of your control. You know what I mean? A lot of these things are out of your control, really. So that's disturbing. All right. Number 5, Jessica.
Don't treat your blessing like a checklist. Okay. But they just did this like a checklist. That was how they told you.
No, you're absolutely right.
How do you make sure that they've all been checked off? Well, you don't make it a checklist.
Yeah. You don't make a checklist.
But you got to come up with
but you don't take it too seriously. But you do take it too seriously.
That's it. Yeah. And you know that you make a mental list. Well, I've accomplished that. And you talked about that, Landon, all the time, that you felt like your whole life was a checklist in the church and the blessing was part of that. You will marry this and you will this and this. And so you do think that way. And then it's obvious what's not. So. Yeah.
And
it is a checklist. It's a timeline.
What's the purpose of giving it to you if it's not something you're supposed to achieve,
Yep,
so. Exactly.
Yep, I think so too. All right, Landon's turn. I think we have a number 6. Does it go on to yes, here we go.
Blessings may come in the next life. Oh, there's the easy out right there.
Right there.
Don't worry, it'll happen in the next life.
Yeah. And that's comforting to an extent for people, but it only lasts for a minute. And then you're like, but wait, I'm here in this life. And again, I'm not pursuing the avenues or making, the decisions or making the connections that would make things I want happen in real time. I mean, without a patriarchal blessing, if you want something, most people know how to at least make it more possible that it will happen. You know what I mean? If you want to be a doctor, you know that you can try to go to medical school. The blessing, there's so many things that are just very nebulous. I'll pray harder. I'll fast longer. It's not like real world cause and effect of an outcome that you want, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's interesting. Okay. Oh, my turn. Number 7, you may not be righteous enough yet to receive the blessing. Again, back on you. And that is what just eats people alive right there. Yeah. It's not happening because of you. Because of you. And we don't know why because of you, but just something about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even believe they even put that in there.
I can't either.
Yeah.
That's just cruel.
Yeah, it's cruel. Yep, that's right. Okay, Jessica, number 8. I think it's our last one, unless there's another page. I don't remember.
Waiting for a blessing to come to pass is a test of faith, and you don't have enough.
Who is writing this? That is so unkind.
Maybe she worked for Oaks or Bednar or something. It's so bad.
I mean, seriously, when you talk about the huge issues like having children or getting married, and you're telling someone you're being tested and you just don't have enough faith, I mean,
the overall tone, and this is how they do treat the blessings, it's very dismissive. Like, well, I don't know why you have a problem. It's because of this, this, and this, and just get over it. But then, so they want it both ways, where this needs to be your own personal scripture. This is so valuable. This is your roadmap for life. And then when someone is actually faced with it, like, this really does not apply to me. I'm trying to make it work, but it doesn't. And then it's just, well, you don't have enough faith, or you don't have, I mean, it's just very flippant instead of the obvious of, okay, well, the guy is full of crap. So
I was going to say, none of these are, come to the conclusion it's all made up and walk away. That's not one of the
exactly.
No.
For, if you want to use it, great. If you don't worry about it. Yeah. No, that's never the attitude.
No, it's God's roadmap for you, and you don't ignore that at all. Let's see. I don't know if there are any more. Oh, no. Okay. A blessing do-over. Yes, it's a real thing. Both Jessica and I have examples of this. And in my case, it's somebody that I knew in college who had a girlfriend, and the girlfriend's parents just didn't like the blessing, just didn't like the way it sounded, just didn't like what was in it.
Oh, I like her parents.
Long enough. And so they took her back in to get a number 2 blessing. And again, I think prominent family, because it really reflected, what she needed to hear. And so it was as simple as that. So I don't know. I don't know what was in the first one or the second one, but I thought that was really interesting that a person can just say, I think I need another one. So
I think this happens more often than you think.
I think it might. Yeah. And so you have that example of the girl.
And I didn't know the family or anything. Right. But yeah, I have heard of others, and especially Bill Reel has a story about it that he talks about when they talk about patriarchal blessings with Lila Tuller and Martine Smith. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. He petitioned for it and they said no. Because while he was a bishop, as he goes into the story, while he was a bishop, he noticed, because he was still in that same board, people would come to him and they would mention and they would say things, and it was like word for word what was in his. Oh. And that's when he realized, it's the same. And I think his guy was rather elderly when he received it. Yeah. And so people were getting do-overs. But yeah, I have heard of that. I've heard there's someone in my family, there are 2 sisters that they got their blessings together. And later one sister asked for a new one and got it because they were almost the same. Yeah, and it was a different patriarch the second time, everything was different. She was much older, but she did get a new one.
I think in the early church they used to have, is that right, Landon, that they sometimes would have more than one blessing? It was more common.
I don't know about that, but I do know, this happens all the time. You get you're sick, you call over the home teacher to give you a blessing. You're not getting better, so you call over your dad and have him give you a blessing to see if it gets better,
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I do think too, I have heard of some patriarchs being placed on emeritus status. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen often. That did happen in my sister's stake in California because people were getting do-overs or they were going to a different patriarch. They weren't, they were finding some other stake or like some family member or family, a friend of someone who was related to a patriarch.
I think I've heard of stakes calling 2 patriarchs. And I think that might be because one's getting too old, and so they start sending the younger one, but they can't release the older one,
Exactly. So I think that's what it was. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they technically said he was emeritus status, but it was the impression. And then it's interesting they can do that for patriarchs, but they can't do that with the 12.
Yeah.
That is interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it has to do with prophetic calling, and it has to do within the 70s where they kind of severed that and said, patriarchs, you're really not that.
I mean, we don't see the current president in actual real time really anymore. So I don't know.
Anything could be happening there. So yeah, I like this AI. It's a mom saying to the patriarch, she needs a new one. And he's going, what? But I'm guessing
like
in the
that.
chat, maybe let us know. Have you guys heard of this? Because, it is funny because if you really think it's God's will, God's word, why would you ever dare ask for another one? If it is God talking to you, that's what he said. You may not like it, but that's what he said.
And we probably ought to state, we didn't state this for those who are not LDS and may not know this, but when you get this blessing, there's a scribe there that's taking it down, or they now they do a recording, and then they play the recording and they write it down. So it's a written blessing that you can always go back and read after the fact. That's how you know what's in it.
Although I have heard cases where what was said verbally doesn't make it onto the paper.
I have heard of that too.
Especially things that are maybe a little more, like he kind of went off the rails and they go, I know I heard this. And then they read it and they're like, it's not there. So I feel like they kind of edit,
I think there is a committee. There's someone that actually reviews them before going out. And I think any second coming references and things like that are now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
they're not as colorful as they used to be.
That's it, exactly. You're not going to be dead in the street. You're not going to be Satan's best friend. You're not going to be Nephi's personal trainer. None of that's happening. It's all just very.
Okay, it didn't say I was Nephi's person.
I know. I'm totally kidding. I wish it had that.
I know that would have been really cool, but no.
Totally kidding. So no, but I do wonder, with the whole covenant path thing. And now they've started to stretch the covenant path backwards into the premortal life. They're saying things to boys like, you already promised to go on a mission. When you did this, I wonder if blessings now are even more skewed toward what you were like and what you promised before. To me, that would make sense, because that really locks people in. If they're told you made these promises, you were faithful, you were this and that, I don't know.
Well, and also that one isn't one that can go wrong.
Yes, exactly.
So they can kind of say whatever Star Trek-y thing happened in the pre-existence, and then, I mean,
that's a great point. That is a great point. There's nowhere to prove or disprove that, and so whatever you can say to somebody,
unless you say you're best friends with Satan, that kind of can go wrong.
Yeah,
some of those. Question for you two: do you know, has someone that's ever served as a patriarch left the church and publicly gone on the circuit?
That is a good question.
That's left the church after
being... I know. I'm trying to think of Mormon Stories episodes, because if somebody did, he would have been on.
That's where they would go. So
that's absolutely true. Yeah,
I would like to hear that.
Yeah, because stake presidents, yes. One mission president, I think. Bishops, yes.
We've had
presidents, but I don't know about a patriarch.
Yes, but.
Because they're called when they're so elderly.
Yeah, they usually are put out to pasture. Yeah.
That is a put out to pasture role.
Yeah. Where the other leaders are younger. So I don't know. It's a good question. Let us know in the chat if you guys have ever heard of a patriarch who stepped away and can reveal some of these secrets. So
it'd be fun to get a post-Mormon patriarch that could give us all post-Mormon blessings.
Oh. Well, I'm curious what goes through their head. I mean, I think the one, that Mormonism Live one that I referenced, that was super telling, because Martine said while she was waiting, because she got it from the church patriarch, Smith. So did Lila, and they have the same patriarch, and their blessings were almost not identical, very similar. And she said while she was sitting there, someone made a reference of, oh, he's going to give you this blessing. And she realized after that he had a formula, and there were different blessings he did.
Blessing A, blessing B. But of course, if you do it over and over and over, you're going to have the same kind of verbiage, and you're going to,
mix it up pattern. Yep.
You're going to have a pattern to do it. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was kind of interesting.
It is. It's fascinating, and like you said, there are other really good podcasts about that. There's the Mormonism Live with Martine and Lila. There's some Mormon discussion ones about this too. I mean, it's just those quirky Mormon things that all of us went through. And it's one of those things you're like, oh yeah, my patriarchal blessing. I need to deconstruct that too, because kind of where we're sitting today is, a result of your blessing. I mean, I remember mine just said, kids and family and didn't mention career. So when I was at BYU and I was starting in advertising, and as I got into it, I'm like, yeah, this is high pressure, high powered. This is not probably going to be something I can do, even though I love it, when I'm a stay-at-home mom. So you know what? How about librarian? I could work at my kids' school. You know what I mean? It was in my head to do that. It really does change the trajectory of your life. And that's 100%. Why it's important to come to terms with it. It does. You know, like you said, you might not have had a career. Lucky you, had you not been.
Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah.
So but I may not have. Yeah.
Yep. And Landon, you might not have been on a podcast if you weren't told that you should study everything, because you literally studied your way out. So oh, this has been good. And I hope that we've had a lot of comments in the chat. I think everybody has something to say about patriarchal blessings or has a story about it. I mean, we just scratched the surface. Obviously, there are so many blessings out there and so many strange things that were said over the years. And, you know, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with current ones. My kids went and got them, but that all would have been like, the most recent one would have been like 4 years ago, and I wasn't invited to that one. So, but I'm not sure how it goes now. So anyway, but thank you guys for dissecting this with it. I think it was really good. And please let us know in the comments what your thoughts and feelings are about your patriarchal blessing. Do you still find it triggering? Have you come to terms with it? Are you at peace with it? And how it impacted your life? I'm just very curious about how people eventually just sort of reconcile all of that and the influence that it had on your life. So please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware of when new episodes come out, you can hit that notification bell. If you would like to help the podcast out financially, we always have links in the show notes. We appreciate you guys so much. We have links to Donor Box. We're a nonprofit, and we love all you guys that donate. You're amazing. We also have links to our merch, a Mormonish mug. If you want to read your patriarchal blessing and take a sip of some beverage from a Mormonish mug, that would work. So, and again, thanks Jessica for coming back. She's always just like, yeah, when do you want to do it? Right? Whenever we ask, we love to have her on. She's just a ray of sunshine. Let's say that, right, Landon?
That's for sure. Yep.
That's for sure. And thanks again, Landon, for co-hosting. Today Landon has such an intense work schedule. It was like it was just going to be me and Jessica. And I'm like, oh no, I'm going to have to start doing a couple of these alone. And the last minute, Landon could jump on. And so we're very happy that he was able to participate. So thank you, everybody. We will see you next time on Mormonish Podcast. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.